This is the No So Co Po with Jay and Tim. I am Jason Verney.
And I am Timothy Holm.
Yes, in this Not So Korean podcast series, we talk to one another and sometimes special guests about
what we know about Korea,
what we don't know about Korea,
what we want to know about Korea,
and occasionally what we don't want to know about Korea. Recording live from UK's Koreatown itself, that's an area in and around New Malden. Yes, that's the largest Koreatown and Korean community in Europe. We'll start this episode off with a little explanation as to where we are and why we are somewhere different. You might be able to tell that we're not in the studio environment, the standard studio environment we have. We're trying something new. It's actually really something old because this idea stems back to when myself and Tim first conceived the idea for this podcast. You see, we've mentioned this before, I'm sure, haven't we, Tim?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, I think we have. But when we came up with the idea of this podcast, which is now, we've done several episodes in about 6 months, it was going to be about us speaking, talking about Korea, drawing comparisons, debating over important or less important issues, culture and Korea in general. In fact, our very first episodes, way back in the summer of 2021, not that difficult to remember, but I'm somehow struggling, they were like this. They were actually us two chatting and asking questions and answering. And it was only a little while after this that we ended up with interviews and events being stacked up and planned. So we wanted to get back on track with these kind of chats. We'll say apologies if there's any echo. You'll find out why that is when we tell you where we are. We're trying this new setup. Anyway, the episodes which you may have been accustomed to, such as interviews and event coverage, will continue, as so will the video format. It will in some way alternate with these types of chit-chat episodes that we're doing right now, here and now. We also do find that we can put out more episodes, if we choose, when we haven't got to set up the filming of episodes as well as the editing of those, because although I like editing, it is my job, after all, it can be very time-consuming, and Tim will sort of contest to me stating how difficult this can be sometimes, wouldn't you? Yeah, I'm sure. We also wanted to bring these conversations between the two of us to places in Koreatown, surrounding ourselves or sort of broadcasting from Korean-related events and venues. Now, we have done a couple of those where we've done an interview with one or two people from events, but we wanted to have a proper sit-down and sort of a half an hour chat about things that we've been thinking about with Korea. But before we get into the subject of this episode, we want to assure you that we already have videos, full audio episodes in the pipeline, as well as interviews, one or two which have already been recorded on video and more to come. Again, if you hear the background noise, it's because, we're going to reveal where we are now. We're actually at a well-known cafe in New Malden called Cake and Bingsu. And we always call it just Bingsoo.
Bingsoo Cafe, basically, and it's on the high street in New Malden, and lots of people come here almost every day. Well, it's always busy, and a lot of Korean people, but also a lot of non-Korean people are here. And at the moment, it is a fairly busy, but fairly average for this time of night on a weekend. And so it's a place we come. I mean, not as much as some other cafes maybe in the area, but we enjoy it. Yeah.
I think we were coming here a little bit more before COVID, because everyone was starting to go to places less. Well, not everyone. Some people ignored the rules, but cafes closed, and this place gets very busy. So there's more oxygen flowing, more risk of. It's a very clean place, don't get me wrong. It's just if there's a lot of people, you've got more risk. But they've kindly, as Tim said, it's a well-known, it's a very popular place, not just with Koreans, Filipinos come here, English, British, other foreign nationalities. They come here. It's very popular. They also have. We've spoken about this recently in an episode. I think they've upstairs. They've got Oh no, that was that was the place above the tea room, wasn't it? I'm thinking of that.
Well,
But
I think they do sell some clothes, fashion items upstairs. I don't know if they do it all the time or it's just occasionally, but I see that sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, they've got a place called Mace upstairs, which I think is like a mini clothes shop, mini department store clothes shop, and they've also got a Japanese restaurant connected to the back of this, which is also upstairs. So that's why you might hear the echo and background noise.
I mean, it's not as noisy as it could be because we actually reserved our own private room here. So, but you will hear some chatter in the background for sure. Yeah.
That's right. So due to these episodes being these are going to be on the go, on the move, on the fly, or even you can call them on location. These episodes, you will hear this kind of background noise, which I actually think is quite nice. It's kind of a bit of
ambiance or atmosphere.
That's it. All the A words. Authenticity.
Yeah.
That's another one.
Yeah. And do we want to mention maybe what the name Bingsu means for anyone who doesn't know what a Bingsu is?
Yeah, that'd be great. I'll let you do that, Tim.
So a Bingsu is kind of a traditional Korean dessert. Actually, I'm not sure how far it goes back, but the original version of a Bingsu has this red bean paste or pat, and with shaved ice, basically. And so that was the traditional version, but they have modernized versions as well with like green tea or chocolate, mango, other fruits and things.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you enjoy that personally or not, Jason. But,
I'm someone who, at the moment I'm actually I've been vegan for 5 weeks, but yes, I do like cakes normally, and it's I like sort of typical. I'm not very patriotic, but I like typical British cakes hot chocolate fudge cake and fruit cake, and I do like that kind of thing. But when it's really creamy and with ice cream, I know the ice cream I like. Some people think I don't because I'm not a big fan of milk. Yeah. But it's I think I've tried a bit of Bingsu once before, but it's a big overdose of milk, sugar, and a cold ice cream or that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's also traditionally something you would have more in the summer rather than the winter. Right now it's winter, but I believe that in the winter they also have red bean porridge, so it's almost like a soup, red bean, and it's sweet. It's not red bean in Korea. It's not a savory thing, right? It's a little bit sweet, so it may be unusual or unfamiliar to some Western people, like it was to me when I first had it. Yeah. But I did develop a taste for it after a while, living in Korea. And now I quite enjoy that, yeah. Okay.
That's just reminding me of something else which I'll talk about in 1 second. But yeah, as I say, that's where we are. We're doing these on the go, on the fly episodes. But as I say, we'll have the other episodes in between. But not only that, we won't do our usual recent news, upcoming news and things we've been up to in this episode. It's literally just us talking. We will say first, Happy Lunar New Year to anybody out there. And I'll let Tim say that maybe in
Korean, 새해 복 많이 받으세요. Yeah, and so in Korean they have the day which is Seollal, but they also call it Seollal because that's like it's more than one day these days. At least they try to make it into a longer kind of vacation period. So usually 3 days around there, they get holidays in Korea. Yeah, for the Lunar New Year.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, it sounds a bit more like Easter or something, doesn't it, for somewhere like us here? But yeah, so happy Lunar New Year, everybody, and Happy New Year if we haven't said that to you, because the last couple of episodes we have put out were kind of from Christmas, and then we did a Happy New Year kind of one, which was a part 2 of that. The thing I was just thinking about with the red bean paste, which you were just talking about, or red bean, we've had it once or twice, from the palace, Gung. Is it Gong? Gong. Sorry, I always get that wrong. Gung. It's a Chinese Korean place, but it's one of the oldest ones here. And they've been, I think it was about a year or 2 ago, they started having this little trolley outside with sort of what do they call those things? A canister that holds sort of heated buns and.
Yes.
I don't know if there is a name or not.
I think of what it is. They probably have a name in Korean. But
Yeah,
well, it's
Chinese.
it's sort of like instead of a fridge
Yeah.
or a refrigerator, it's like a steamer, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say steamer because they are steam buns after all. I suppose that's probably the best way. It's more. It looked to me more Chinese, of course, than it did Korean. But that's just because what we're used to seeing in Chinatown, what have you. But this particular episode, we're just going to sort of spend, I don't know, 20 minutes or so talking about Korea and what we obviously is the Korean podcast or the not so Korean podcast. But we've been talking lately about what we've missed in Korea and thoughts of going back there. So we thought it'd be a good sort of time to sort of riff on these topics, this topic of Korea, because a lot of people are lucky enough to be traveling again, although some people think that's not a great idea. But the urge is definitely there for both of us to travel back to Korea, or even just as we have been, reminisce about what we have done in Korea. And whether that's been together or whether Tim's been mulling it over or whether I've been thinking about it. Frankly, I'm hoping to go in the summer because of, I've got that film that I've mentioned. It's in a film festival in the summer, unless anything changes due to COVID. And I really want to go there. And that's made me think, what I have been missing. And Tim's also, you've been thinking a bit about the possibility of you returning.
Yes, well, I was just gonna say, like, I suppose even the Seollal, the New Year reminds me of some memories in Korea, but of course that's usually a time for families in Korea. So, and of course I don't have a Korean family, so during that time, sometimes maybe I would be by myself if my friends were visiting their family, and often their families live outside of Seoul where I was living, so they would go to the countryside or whatever, some other cities, and I would be left in Seoul. And that's one of the few times when Seoul would actually be quite quiet. You could walk around the streets and there wouldn't be that many people out, and I kind of enjoyed that. But I don't think you've been to Korea during the winter time, have you, Jason? Or Chuseok, for that matter, which is Thanksgiving.
Yeah, well, actually, you just sort of prompted a memory there, because I was in Korea, one of my first trips. Now, I'm sure it was more Chuseok, sort of late autumn. It was the autumn. It was more Chuseok. But I was a time when I arrived in Korea and nobody I knew was around. Unlike Tim, as he just said, I haven't lived there. But when I visited, I did think, everyone's got plans. I thought either that or they're just making an excuse. They don't want to see me. And I don't think I'd been there. But hasn't Seollal, I can never say it properly, been later than now? It's a bit early, isn't it?
It changes every year, because the lunar calendar isn't the same as the solar calendar that we go by in the West. So, and some people aren't even aware that Korea celebrates this. They just think it's the Chinese New Year, right? But actually, several countries in East Asia celebrate the Lunar New Year. And yes, it changes every year. And also, they celebrate the Western New Year on January 1st or December 31st. So they have 2 New Years. But generally speaking, the Lunar New Year is the bigger celebration for Korean people usually, and it's more for families, whereas the other one is maybe less for families. But so anyway, I forgot where I was going.
I think it was the fact that whether Seollal gets brought forwards, of course it does. And this does feel a hell of a lot nearer to New Year than...
Yes. So, I think usually it's later in February. I mean, not always, but this is maybe a little bit earlier than usual. But sometimes I think it even happens at the end of January. So it fluctuates quite a bit.
Right. Yeah, so... I mean, that's it. I mean, a lot of, like you just said, like Tim just said, a lot of places in Asia do celebrate this or some form of this, and Thailand apparently there are a couple of my Thai friends on Facebook and that posting stuff for the Lunar New Year, but then a lot of people say, well, they actually celebrate it on a set date every year, which is Songkran, which you probably know about. That's in April, so it's kind of odd that you know, of course, they still celebrate it as it's the Lunar New Moon.
Is that more of a Buddhist festival? I know they do don't they also do something like something involving water, right? But I don't know if that's tied to some Buddhist traditions or not.
Yeah, tied. Yeah,
tied.
I get that. Yeah, but yeah, no, sorry. It's it is you're right. It is a Buddhist. I think it originated from some people putting monks putting water on people, blessing, and then it got sort of way out of control. But I thought I'd read somewhere, it's one of these Instagram posts that's mentioned it did come from the Lunar New Year, but so maybe it's tied in with the Buddhist thing as well. I'm not entirely sure. But this is a not so Korean podcast,
not entirely sure.
Yeah. Sorry, we're yeah. It's believe it or not, it's actually sort of early evening, and we must be coming up with these terrible puns. Terrible puns. Yeah. So yeah, we've been thinking a lot about what we miss in Korea, and you know, it's for me.
Yeah,
you know,
Miss Korea, Jason.
What's that?
Miss Korea.
Miss Korea.
As in
Miss Universe.
Yeah, like.
I don't know. I don't hear anything. Isn't Miss Universe banned now, or is it still? Is it still a thing?
I think it's still a thing. Yeah, somewhere in the universe, anyway.
Yeah, somewhere in the universe. I mean, I thought it was banned because of the, you know, it's objectifying. But again, I know they do have that. You're right,
yeah,
Miss Korea.
I think they are trying to make changes to make it a little more, you know, modernized, like
PC.
Yeah, have less bikini contests or whatever they do, you know, something like that. But
yeah, so but yeah, as I say, enough about those jokes. I'm personally speaking, just when I've been thinking about returning to Korea, if I do, which will be the summer. Now, I have been to Korea in the summer before, but technically I think it was May. So it was only just beginning, but it was hot.
Yeah.
Actually, no, sorry, it was June. I went to film something on Jeju, and I was there for a couple of weeks in the country. But I remember, again, I might have mentioned this on a previous podcast, but I remember getting off the plane onto the metro, subway, whatever you want to call it, an hour or two later, getting off at Haewa station, which I like staying at, near the big university, one of them. And I just came out and it was blazing hot, and I actually loved it because, you know, we don't get a lot of sun in the UK. We do, but it's not like, you know, a constant heat. And it was really good. But so I would be looking forward to that. Yeah, some Koreans obviously they do say it's too much. Like in the winter, it's meant to be too much as well, too cold. But you've lived there. Actually, thinking about that, you've lived there in all seasons or just?
Yeah, pretty much all seasons. I mean, there were a few times where I was just there over like fall and spring time, but there were also several years I was there through the whole year. And yeah, the winters are freezing. I would say definitely worse than London, and even worse than where I grew up in Canada. And people in Korea, they always said, "Oh, you're from Canada. You must be used to this, or it must be worse over there." But I'm from the West Coast, so near Vancouver is actually not that cold in the winter. It's I would say it's comparable to London. I mean, maybe a little colder than here, but it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, Korea for me was quite challenging in the winter. I remember one winter, actually my pipes froze, and so I couldn't get any water coming through, so I had to wait for them to just thaw out, you know.
Okay.
So, but that was pretty extreme. It was like minus 22 or 24 or something Celsius, right? So that's probably the coldest I've ever experienced, and for some people that's probably nothing if you're from Russia or something. I don't know, but yeah, well, yeah, maybe some parts of Scotland or something. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely not one thing I miss. That's definitely not one thing I miss about Korea is the winters. I prefer the summers. I know some people even think the summers are too hot and humid, but I definitely prefer to be hot than to be too cold.
Yeah.
because at least you don't have to wear so much clothing, you can just go outside in a t-shirt and shorts. It's much more comfortable, yeah.
So did you you got me thinking, because I was thinking about, we were talking about topics for this show recently, and one of them was sort of fashion that we see in Koreatown or New Malden, and we see in Korea. And I was just going to say to you, Tim, did you have one of those long coats? I mean, obviously,
no,
you have long coats.
Long COVID. I didn't have long COVID, but I had a long coat.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I think I did. Actually, I have one on right now. It's not that long.
Yeah. That's like a duffel coat, kind of.
Yeah, I think maybe I had a longer one for a short period of time in Korea, but yes.
I think it's just one of those. I think it's just one of those things that I noticed a lot, because I've never, before I'd been to Korea, I'd never seen those kind of long coats. They didn't even look particularly warm, but I know they are, with some padding and stuff. So I mean, not with the duffel coat kind of, around. But I just wondered, been in the winter, I imagine, I suppose a lot of females wear them, maybe more than the men, but
it's a bit of both, I think. Yeah, also the Canada Goose is quite a common winter jacket to wear. At least it was when I was there. It might not be anymore, because the thing with Korea and fashion is the trends, change so often. Like every few years there's something new, or even every year there's something new that comes up. So you're never really sure what it's going to be. But then very soon you'll see not everybody, but at least maybe up to half of the population, it looks like, is wearing more or less the same sort of outfit. Yeah.
Yeah, well, actually, because actually, I remember once when sorry, I can't get my words out again. When I went to Korea, and I was amazed at the fashion, how different it is. And I know this is not necessarily what we miss about Korea, but I do miss the fashion. It's just different. But then it wasn't until I spoke to Koreans, even some pretty well-known Koreans, or even just friends of mine, or a bit of both. And they were saying, yes, it is nice, it is good, but they said that a lot of people do wear the same. It becomes very, and we start seeing it even around here. I mean, with the men, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not putting it. I think it's quite nice, actually. I mean, the men, the young lads especially, and even the older, so ajumas and the men around here, they're sort of wearing their sort of trainers and. Sort of a hip. They look quite hip for someone who's probably 70 or I don't know actually how old they are. But again, you notice different trends, and of course, people might come to UK and say the same about me, or even Canada at Tim.
Yeah, I think it is true that Korean people do tend to care more about their appearance, and that includes dressing up as well. And it's something that even my mother, she noticed when she came to visit me in Korea one time. She thought, oh, everyone's so fashionable, especially the young women. They all put makeup on when they go out, and have nice looking hair and dress up, as I said. So she was quite impressed by that, I think, because generally, especially in Canada, and especially in the Vancouver area, to me, it seems like everyone just dresses totally casual, like they wear jeans or, just t-shirts or baggy pants or, hoodies, things like that. Very, very casual clothing, and often very dark looking clothing. And so I never particularly liked that, because I always felt it looks a bit depressing, But in Korea, they have a bit of a different attitude towards it. And some people might think it's a bad thing, because there's less maybe individuality to the clothing to a certain respect, although I do think that's changing a little bit in past years. And also maybe people feel like they have to dress up every time they go out, whereas some people, they don't necessarily want to do that every time they go out,
Yeah.
So I often heard Korean people in Canada, especially women, when I met them, they would say, oh, I'm so glad that I'm in Canada, because I don't have to dress up when I go out. I can just wear, sweatpants or whatever, and they don't need to worry about what other people think about their appearance. You know,
I think that's an important thing that you just mentioned there. Funny, we're talking about what we miss about Korea or what we've been thinking about going into Korea. We're also talking about what we spot and the fashion and how we're coming into cultural things now, where you've got to keep up with the Joneses and you've got to look so good, even to your parents, and you know, and it's interesting because we would like in England we do want to look good as well, but we'd throw something on. But if it doesn't, you know, I've heard that in Korea, if it's got to look really good before you even throw it on. I'm talking about the younger generation, I guess you are as well, and it does make you sort of wonder. Again, not making anything derogatory about, not stating anything derogatory about Korea. I'd never do that, but it's just. You notice these differences, and you know, there's a lot of pressure on how you look, and that goes down. That's whether it comes to the facial, let's just say, maintenance, or whether it's the clothing, as Tim just mentioned, or you know, even the latest phones. Although that seems to be the same. So many countries now. It's not really just Korea. But gadgets, obviously Korea are very well known for gadgets and things, but so I mean, so you've thought about going back to Korea, you know, even for a visit lately. I mean, different reasons for me, but well, actually I will say one thing. Mine isn't just because of the film festival. I actually do miss the travelling, and I do want to go back to Asia. I feel like, actually personally speaking, I feel like I'm letting myself down, or I'm letting the image of myself down. Right. You know, that's the person that used to go abroad every year. It's funny, isn't it? You start looking, you know, I mean, I was looking quite inwards at the beginning of this pandemic, and now I was looking outwards and thinking, oh, everyone's not doing something, so I'm not missing out, the FOMO thing. But now I'm kind of looking, sort of thinking of what people might be thinking of me. Okay, this is not a fashion thing.
No, I agree. I mean, even I saw somebody, one of my friends, I won't mention who it is, but went to southern part of Europe recently. I won't mention the country, but anyway, and even just seeing that, I there is a thought in the back of my head, like, why are you doing that now? Like, why don't you just wait a few more months until this thing is totally over with? But at the same time, I can understand the impulse or the desire to do that and to want to do that. And I mean, I definitely don't enjoy, you know, being I mean, I'm fine living here, but occasionally I do want to get out too.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, I can see what you're saying, and I do. Yeah, I mean, if I was to tell my parents, oh, I'm going away, then they might be. Well, sorry, my mum anyway. They might be sort of, please don't go away because it's still not great out there. But then there's something that you only live once, and hopefully not die. You know, you do live. And you just, but again, like I say, I feel like I used to be the person that said, I've just been to Korea last year, and now this will be the third, you know, 2019 I was there last, and and in Asia, like a big 3-month trip, and I just feel like, you know, it's kind of, because I discovered travelling quite late. I mean, I used to travel when I was younger, but travelling by plane in the last sort of 15 years, and I just feel like I wasn't, you know, what defined me was travelling as well as films and filmmaking maybe, but I just I feel like, you know, another 2 years is going to go past, and I've got to get more catching up to do, and also, I mean, going back to the original reason for this sort of episode. You know, there are people I miss in Korea, and I know there are of you, Tim, as well. And as much as everyone gets on with their own lives, there's certain memories of a certain place. Yes, Seoul is too many memories because, you know, there's too many times I've been there, and obviously you have as well, Tim. You lived there. And then I think of other places like Jeju, and I used to, when I go to join in with the Gyeonggi, Kangjong sort of activism there, but not just that, just to feel the Jeju air, go on the Olay Trail, you know, that's just, I mean, yes, I could go to the Isle of Wight in the UK, but I just feel like there's something, I just want to plod around that island.
Yeah.
And I mean, in fact, I could be talking about the whole of Korea, just plod around there. And then just even just for 2 weeks and come back. Obviously, that's not realistic, but I'm just saying I feel like there's a part of me that's currently missing.
Yeah.
And it's it can't stay missing forever. And also, I'm going to get older. And then if God, let's just imagine this pandemic had stayed in that terrible situation, a really bad situation for 10 years, and I would be past the prime of traveling, and I kept saying every time I go to Korea, I'll revisit Gwangju. And I went there twice, but I didn't. Then the last trip, which was my 7th trip to Korea, I didn't manage Gwangju. So even then I felt like, I'm like with my abstaining from stuff and alcohol and stuff like that. I feel like if I promised myself something, I'd break it, and I kind of feel terrible, which you shouldn't in life. Obviously, you shouldn't make these things and feel bad, because it's just life. It's just how it is. So, yeah, I mean, and there are places, I think I do a bit of angst that when I do go to Korea, I don't do as much travelling. I mean, I'm a bit envious, not envious, but I'm sort of grateful to you or whatever for travelling, because when you were there, you made the most of going around places. And when I'm there, it's anything between 2 and 5 weeks. And I just get caught up in Seoul. I think I'll go to Jeonju in 2 days' time. I've never been to Cheongju, Cheongju with the lake and that. But I could, if I got my bum in gear, I could actually, do that. But you get relaxed. You think, okay, I'm going to meet so and so tomorrow. Somebody 2 days later, before you know it, a week's gone. But so sort of drifting off topic there, but I feel that Korea, as much as things in its culture, I'm very, I wouldn't say proud of, but very enthused about films, especially, and tradition and shamanism and all that. There are certain things that I do get under my skin, which I can't stand. But at the same time, there'll always be something in the Korean air that's we've probably spoken about this before. I think in an earlier episode about the air, and yes, the Korean air is not meant to be. Some say because of the dust and all that. But I mean, the actual air that you get, and even the air of just being a stranger, and the air of kindness, people's kindness. Yeah, I mean, at first, a lot's changed since I went there first, and definitely since you went there. That people are more used to seeing foreigners there. They weren't before. But even then, you still feel a stranger. But I actually don't mind that. And of course, film festivals. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, that's it.
Yeah, no, well, I was just going to say on that question of not minding being a stranger in Korea, because, there's some people, foreigners, I guess, especially who live in Korea for a while, and some of them actually complain that they're not accepted as like part of Korean society or Korean, but the thing is they're not Korean, right? They weren't born there, they weren't raised there, they grew up with a different culture. So I would never expect to be treated exactly as a Korean person, and to be honest, I don't want to be, because all the stress that they go through, I certainly wouldn't want to have to go through military service, for example, or something like that. So I'm happy to be a foreigner in Korea and treated as a foreigner. That's fine, and there are actually some benefits to that, I think.
Yeah, and I think also it made me think of something else. There are expats in other parts of the world, and I've kind of had a chat with a friend who used to be an expat before, and I was commenting on stuff that I didn't know about, so I can't really comment because I hadn't been an expat, or you have been an expat, but I've only been on holiday to Korea, and the thing is,
sorry to interrupt, but that even that word expat is kind of controversial, right? Because they call other people immigrants, right, or aliens, even so. But it seems to be mostly like white Westerners who are considered as expats, But I don't know. That's another subject of conversation.
Yeah, but what I was you're right. But what I was going to say was, it's got a bit quieter in here now. Well, not in the room we're in because we're still talking, but outside the room. you do get expats, as far as I'm aware, and I see it, that don't actually make an effort to integrate anyway.
Yeah.
So there they are. They've got their little home comforts from England or from America. So they're not making them most of, they're going to meetups, but they only meet expats.
Yeah,
possibly.
Yeah, like they stay in Itaewon or that area, Haebangchon or something. No, there's a Haebangchon. Have you heard of HBC?
Oh, yes,
yeah. But I think even that is changing because a lot of Korean people are going there now these days. So it's not as foreigner centric. If that makes sense. But whether they try to integrate more the foreigners, I don't know these days. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I hope that they would try. Yeah.
I mean, and I hear it again, and I hate to keep to play countries to Thailand or something, but there's another place I've been to, but you get the same thing there. People don't, and I do know you'll never become a citizen in these countries, but just enjoy yourself while you're there.
Definitely enjoy themselves. I think. I mean, that's often the main reason that they go there, and actually. That's a reason that Korean people sometimes criticize a lot of foreigners who come to Korea because they just go there to have fun. They don't really take their job seriously. They just want to earn some money quickly, and then they'll get out of the country in a year or two or whatever.
So you're talking about like teachers and things, because it's
mostly teachers, maybe some soldiers as well. I don't know. I don't really talk to them that much, but yeah.
Yeah, and there's also bad stories with soldiers going there and taking advantage of women and stuff, and that's unfortunately that's war and military for you, which I actually hate anyway. I know you do, obviously, but I mean, it's I was compelled, or we were compelled to do this podcast because of just these constant thoughts. I mean, you go through a week and you don't always think about going to Korea, but it comes up quite regularly, and it's just something that we could talk more on this, and I'm sure we'll have another sort of episode about this. But actually one other thing, I probably mentioned this as well in a previous episode, and sorry that I might be mentioning stuff we mentioned before, but if I was going to go to that, if my film was showing in December, which was meant to be, I was having second thoughts, and actually my dad had passed away as well, but I was having second thoughts because it's so cold, and now it's meant to be in the summer. I'm thinking, that's if it is. I don't know. They might change things, and that's in I think it's Gangwon province area. So, but that would be for 2 weeks, and I'd go elsewhere. I might stay for 90 days if I have to quarantine, even in the summer, and even if it's still 10 days, I will do it. I think I will do it.
I think they've already lowered it to 7 days. So and from what I've heard, they're hoping to lower it possibly even to 0 by the summertime. But that's if everything goes well.
Yeah. But even saying that, another reason why I was saying that was because even with that cold in my mind, I was still thinking, but it's Korea in the winter. I want to experience it. I was still getting the urge a few months ago to go to Korea and also once you turn into a new year, we're now 2022. Again, that's another year that feels like, oh God, I've gone around another corner and I haven't gone back to Korea. And I mean, it could be that myself and Tim end up in Korea at the same time. But, we'll have no excuse for not carrying on the podcast then. But and we wouldn't anyway, even if one of us does go to Korea.
May have to change it to the little bit more Korean podcast or something. Yeah.
What are we going to abbreviate that to? Libimo Co.
Yeah, something like that.
But that would probably work. So I think that was probably it for now. We just wanted to do a small one because we wanted to, as I say, this is something we wanted to do from the very beginning. We wanted to have a chat out and about in the sort of moment of on location in Koreatown, but also just to mull over things. I mean, obviously this is not a sort of a very political thing, and it's just we just want to chat about these things and what we miss and what we compare from the UK or from Canada to Korea, and what urges we have to return there.
I mean, to be honest, we could talk much longer than this, but we don't want to bore people. So,
yeah.
But I mean, if anyone does want to hear us talk, more extensively, we'd be happy to do that. Just let us know in feedback or in the comments or whatever.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we've done a few episodes and video ones where, I'm sure people haven't stayed till the end. A lot of editing been involved in that, but these ones we want to do audio. We've got a video episode coming up as well. This one will probably air before that one. So you'll be hearing this on Spotify or Apple Music or Google Podcasts or Buddha knows where. There's so many places these days, but obviously on our YouTube channel, which is currently, because we might be changing that, currently it's youtube.com/Jason Verney, couldn't remember my own name there, or Jason K-Town Verney if you just do a search. And obviously we're on Instagram, Not So Korean Podcast, and on 2 places on Facebook. That's the group and the page. So we will say goodbye, and we'll finish with our usual words.
And also Happy New Year and 새해 복 많이 받으세요. 안녕히
계세요.